The sky above you is still a gentle wash of twilight blue stretching into silence. The sun has just passed the horizon, and everything is holding its breath. You stand at the edge of a quiet lake, where the surface is so calm it almost doesn't look like water. It mirrors the world above the soft clouds, the first pale stars, the deepening shadows of trees behind you. There's something sacred about this hour, the moment between day and night, between movement and stillness, between thought and dream. You feel it in your body gently slowing. Your shoulders soften, your breathing lengthens, and your eyes grow heavier as if lulled by the sky's dimming light. The lake, too, is changing, not in its shape but in how it feels. It no longer seems like a place you simply look at, but a space you might enter. Its surface no longer separates you from it, but invites you in. And so you do. You take a single step forward, and everything becomes quieter. The water receives you without sound, without judgment. Its temperature is perfect, neither cold nor warm, just present. It wraps around your ankles, then your knees, then your ribs as you float deeper into it, each breath drawing you further from the weight of the day. Above you, the world continues on, but down here, beneath the surface, time seems to thin. You are not sinking quickly. You are drifting like a leaf that has chosen to fall slowly, so it can notice everything on the way down. Your body begins to follow a rhythm that doesn't belong to you alone. It is the rhythm of night. The gentle pulsing of your heart slows, not out of weariness but trust. The cadence of your breath grows shallower, softer, not because you're out of breath, but because you don't need as much. This is what your body knows how to do when night comes. It begins to shut the gates of waking life. Tiny signals pass through your nervous system, quieting the circuits that were busy all day, processing sights, sounds, thoughts, responsibilities. One by one, they dim. Your brain's thalamus, a kind of sensory gatekeeper, begins to close its doors. It stops passing on information from the outside world. It no longer reports every sound, every flicker of light. Instead, it invites quiet, tells your brain you may rest now. There is nothing more to gather. As you float deeper, this shift continues. Subtle, like the tide changing. You don't have to do anything, your brain already knows the way. Something called melatonin is rising in your bloodstream, released from a pinecone-shaped gland deep in your brain. The pineal gland. It's like a soft chemical lantern, glowing inside you. Melatonin doesn't knock you out. It simply whispers to the rest of you, the day is done, and your body listens. You notice your muscles relaxing more now, even the tiny ones in your face, your jaw, your brow, your eyes. They are no longer performing. They are returning to their natural state. Stillness. This stillness is not absence. It is preparation. Your body is not shutting down. It is transitioning from outward to inward, from gathering to integrating, from doing to simply being. The lake around you becomes darker, but not frightening. It is the darkness of peace, the kind of dark that covers seeds before they bloom, the kind of dark that carries you toward dreams. And just like the lake, your brain is more than it seems. Beneath its calm surface, entire worlds shift and shimmer. Your cortex, the outer layer that handles conscious thought, is beginning to quiet. But your inner brain, your subconscious, is waking up in a new way. It is here that memory floats. Here emotions soften. Here that sleep begins to reshape what you've learned, what you've felt, what you need to heal. Your brainwaves, too, are changing. From the fast, sharp beta waves of waking life, you are now entering alpha, the slow, drowsy waves of twilight thought. Soon you will drift into theta, the realm of dreams and healing. But there is no rush. Everything happens in its time. This descent from the surface of awareness to the quiet depths of sleep is a natural process like floating down a gentle stream. Your thoughts drift like petals, not tangled or urgent. They come, they go, and in between them, more space, more silence, more rest. You do not need to guide yourself. You are being carried by biology, by rhythm, by trust. There is a threshold beneath you, a thin, invisible veil between waking and sleep. And just as a swimmer slips beneath the surface without a ripple, so do you now slip into deeper states. Not unconscious, just elsewhere. You begin to see shadows of something more beneath you, the faint outline of structures, as if the lake is hiding something beneath its calm exterior. A building? Passageway? You aren't sure yet, but something is down there waiting, soft, silent, still, a place not to fear, but to explore. You feel curiosity stir, not in your thinking mind, but in something deeper, a gentle pull like gravity but for wonder. And so, without effort, you allow yourself to drift closer, to pass through the layer of silt, where thoughts begin to settle, and the stories of your mind begin to take shape. The water grows dimmer now, tinted with a gentle, earthen hue. You are descending not into darkness, but into something quieter than light. Around you, a fine cloud begins to rise, soft particles suspended in the water, curling and twirling like smoke beneath a glass surface. This is the silt of thought, a place where memories and sensations swirl gently, not quite anchored, not quite gone. They are fragments, loose, unfiled, unresolved. The dust of the day. You feel them brush against you as you drift downward. A half-remembered sentence, a lingering sound, a feeling from earlier you didn't know you had. They rise like slow snowfall, weightless but meaningful. Your brain has collected so much today, more than you consciously know. Tiny experiences, the shape of a cloud you didn't notice, the scent of a passing breeze, the way someone looked at you in passing. They are all here in this soft sediment of the mind. But the brain is wise. It doesn't keep everything. As you float through the silt, you begin to understand what's happening. This layer is where thoughts are sorted, where the brain decides what to keep and what to release, not out of carelessness but clarity. There is grace in forgetting. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that governs decision-making and working memory, is no longer at full power. It's gone quiet, not shut down, just stepping back, like a librarian pausing for the night, letting the deeper parts of the library sort themselves. The hippocampus, which we met at the edge of sleep, I still work quietly here, but its role has changed. No longer taking in now, it is organizing, tidying up the shelves. Some memories, the ones threaded with meaning, emotion, or repetition, begin to settle toward permanence. They are gently moved down deeper toward long-term storage. Others lighter, more fleeting, like what you had for lunch last Tuesday, dissolve upward, returned to the current of forgetting. And yet, even forgetting has a purpose. Think of your brain like a garden. Some thoughts are seeds, meant to grow. Others are petals, beautiful but brief. The mind, like a careful gardener, knows the difference. It doesn't mourn every lost leaf. It trusts in the cycle. You float in the space where that cycle unfolds, where your brain does its quiet sorting. No effort is needed from you. You are simply the passenger, the witness, held softly in the drift. Occasionally, a thought will rise, one you thought was gone. It might surprise you. You may wonder why it appears now, but there is a rhythm here too. Sometimes memory resurfaces not because it is urgent, but because you are finally still enough to feel it. You see a scene, from years ago perhaps, softened at the edges like a faded photograph. It doesn't demand your attention. It just floats. Then, just as easily, it dissolves. Neuroscientists call this process memory consolidation. But here, it feels more like moonlight on a quiet river. No force, no rush. Just the brain doing what it does best. Making sense of the day. Even your emotions are sifting. The amygdala, the emotional sentinel of your mind, is not gone, just tempered. Its edges have softened. In sleep, especially in the early stages, emotions begin to untangle from their sharpness. What felt urgent at noon may feel less so now, as if the mind is exhaling. You pass a cluster of thought threads that never found resolution during the day. Little worries, half-formed ideas, unanswered questions. They don't ask for answers now. They simply float, and floating is enough. In this gentle fog of cognition, your brain is no longer trying to solve. It is sorting, freeing, unloading. You begin to feel lighter, not just in body but in mind. The sediment thins, the swirling slows. What once was fog becomes clarity. This is the power of letting go. Forgetting is not failure. It is a necessary kindness. Just as a tree drops its leaves to make space for spring, your brain releases clutter so that new growth may come. A gentle current moves beneath you now. You are being drawn further into the lake's depth, into the realm where memory becomes meaning, and meaning becomes identity. You see it just below, a structure in the quiet dark. Stone steps leading to a domed hall, glowing softly in the water like a memory lantern. A library vast, ancient, and breathing. The silt clears, and as it does, you begin to sense what lies beneath. Not just forgotten thoughts, but the deep architecture of who you are, and the one who keeps it all, the keeper of story, the binder of moments, is waiting below among the shelves. You touch the lake bed with the softness of a feather settling. The silt has cleared, and before you stretches a structure half-dreamed, half-remembered. An enormous domed hall carved from pale stone and rippling light. It rests beneath the surface like a secret library, its shelves not made of wood or metal, but of soft tendrils, curved and spiraling like seashells. This is the hippocampus, the quiet keeper of memory, not just a part of your brain but a process, a way of turning moments into meaning. You step gently inside. There is no sound here but the slow hush of water and thought. The air, or what feels like it carries the scent of old pages, damp earth, and something tender, like rain waiting to fall. Shelves drift outward in circular rings, each one alive with activity. But the activity is gentle. Books open without hands. Pages turn without wind. There is no rush, and yet, something deep is always happening. The hippocampus, nestled in both hemispheres of your brain, is working even as you sleep, receiving, organizing, and archiving. It doesn't store all memories, but it decides which ones to shape into form, chooses what stays. You notice this process unfolding around you. Floating pages approach not paper exactly, but shimmering fragments, translucent and pulsing faintly with light. A glance from earlier today, the rhythm of a song, the texture of someone's voice. They drift slowly across the room, toward gentle, curving filaments that resemble the branching arms of coral. These are neural pathways, living shelves that receive the pages and hold them in place. Some fragments fit easily. They slide into existing volumes, expanding what was already known. These are the familiar pieces, moments that confirm what you already believe, or thoughts you've had before now made more vivid. Others search for where they belong. They flicker, hesitant. New experiences, surprises. They are met with curiosity. The hippocampus does not rush to label. It offers patience. It lets the memory settle before binding it. You pass a section where memories are stitched together. Here, cells called engrams are linking. Like notes in a melody, they begin to form the shape of a full recollection. You learn that a memory is not stored in one place, but in patterns across many regions. The hippocampus is simply the weaver, the one who threads each piece into coherence. A gentle warmth begins to rise in the hall, and you feel it in your own chest. A recognition. Not all memories are neutral. Some arrive with emotion. You pass a shelf glowing slightly more brightly than the rest. Here, the memories pulse with feeling. Joy, sorrow, fear, hope. These are prioritized. When something matters to you, the hippocampus takes note. Emotion tags a memory for deeper preservation. It's as if the ink becomes permanent. You feel awe. The hippocampus has no eyes, but it understands your life. It knows what matters, what hurts, what heals. It also understands space. You come across a wing of the library, where the memories are not just moments but places. The spatial maps of your life, the layout of your childhood home, the turns on a familiar path, the orientation of stars overhead. Cells here are called place cells. They activate when you are somewhere specific. They allow you to know where you are. Even in sleep, the hippocampus replays your movements, reinforcing your sense of direction and place. In this underwater library, nothing is wasted. Even memories that do not stay are honored for their visit. Some are temporarily held, in case you need them tomorrow. Others are passed gently to deeper storage, in the cortex, to be kept for a lifetime, or perhaps forgotten with kindness. The librarian, not a figure but a presence, drifts past you. It is made of light and rhythm. It hums with electrochemical waves, slow, deliberate, soothing. You realize this whole process is made of repetition. Each night you sleep, you return here. Even if you don't remember, the hippocampus doesn't need your awareness. It does its work anyway, protecting your story, not as a perfect archive, but as a living narrative, edited, evolving, merciful. Some memories are polished smooth. Others are tucked away until the time is right. Some are allowed to fade. You see your own stories, bound in colors you've never named. They float, glow, drift. You are made of these, and you are not alone. Every mind has such a place. Quiet, watchful, unspoken. You pause in the center of the dome, watching the memory shelves slowly spin. It is mesmerizing. You do not feel sleepy, but you feel softened. The way stone becomes smooth in a river. The way grief becomes reflection. The way living becomes remembering. Somewhere behind you, you hear a ripple, a stirring current. Something downstream is calling. You look once more at the glowing spiral of memory and wonder, what connects these shelves to the spark of understanding? What builds bridges between one moment and the next? You drift toward a passageway of dew-covered light, where messages pass like whispers. You are entering the world of connection, of the bridges between thoughts, of synapses. The passage narrows. You move gently through a tunnel of delicate threads, strands suspended like spider silk in dawn's first light. Everywhere, dewdrops cling to fine filaments, glowing softly, pulsing with life. This is not a tunnel of stone or structure, but a passage of connection. The unseen web that allows one thought to lead to another, one idea to become memory, one sensation to become understanding. You are inside a synapse, or rather, you are inside a forest of them, billions upon billions across your brain, each one a tiny bridge between two neurons, not touching but near, just enough space between them for possibility to flow. You pause and look closer. A spark leaps small, electric, beautiful. Jumps the gap, crossing the synaptic cleft like a dragonfly, skimming the surface of still water. This spark is a signal, an impulse, a message, carried not by language, but by movement. Your neurons, the brain's messengers, send and receive this signal across the synapse, and in doing so, they connect your entire inner world. One synapse does not do much alone, but together, they shape everything: your thoughts, your memories, your habits, even your sleep. The message that crosses the synapse is more than electricity. It is also chemistry. Tiny molecules called neurotransmitters, released from one side, drifting gently across the cleft, and received by the other. You see them now, shimmering messengers, each with a distinct hue. Some bring calm. GABA, the quieting whisper, eases your mind into rest. Some bring focus. Dopamine, the soft spark of anticipation, guides your attention. Some bring mood. Serotonin, the balancing touch, helps you feel grounded and safe. Each one drifts like mist from one neuron to another, binding briefly, then fading. A kiss of meaning. You begin to understand. Your thoughts are not solid. They are patterns, made possible only because these connections exist. Each time a signal passes through, the connection strengthens. This is called long-term potentiation, the brain's way of remembering not just facts, but how to remember. The more a path is used, the easier it becomes to travel. Like a forest trail, tread again and again, until it becomes smooth, intuitive. You float past a glowing strand where a thought has recently traveled. You see the mark it left, a kind of warmth in the synaptic space, evidence of experience. Not all connections last forever. Some fade from lack of use. The brain, in its wisdom, prunes what it does not need. This is not a loss. It is clear, an act of refining, not erasing. You realize your brain is sculpting itself, even in sleep. This is synaptic plasticity, the ability to adapt, to grow, to change the shape of thought itself. It is a process so quiet, so natural, you almost never notice it happening. And yet it is here, in these small, glowing crossings, that you become yourself. You drift deeper into the corridor, and the strands begin to hum, each one a note, each spark a melody. You hear your childhood here, a memory shaped by practice and time. You hear your curiosity, the way questions form bridges to knowledge. You hear silence, spaces where the brain is simply resting, but still forming quiet pathways for peace. The whole structure feels like music, and indeed, the brain is rhythmic by nature. Its electrical activity rises and falls like waves, and these rhythms guide when, where, and how synapses fire. As you sleep, the rhythm slows. Your synapses don't stop working, but they work differently, more thoughtfully, more selectively. Some synaptic pathways replay memories, helping reinforce learning. Others dissolve stress, quieting the circuits that carried worry during the day. You are not thinking right now, but your brain is still building, still tending the garden of your mind, still watering the roots of who you are. You pause beneath a great branching network, a canopy of filaments extending into the unseen. It stretches far beyond what you can perceive, a reminder that the mind is not a machine, but a forest, alive, growing, wild. A single drop forms at the tip of one branch, a memory, a feeling, a spark. It trembles, shines, and falls gently into the space below, where it will become part of something larger. You follow it, down, through branches that become waves, into the next layer of rest, where dreams are mirrored and stories reshape themselves in sleep. You are floating again, not down this time, but across, as if weightless in a slow-moving current. The world around you has grown brighter in places, as though lit from within. You begin to pass through a vast chamber, made entirely of mirrors. But these are not mirrors of glass. They are reflections made of memory and sensation, shifting as you pass by. This is the landscape of REM, rapid eye movement sleep, the sleep stage where the mind begins to dream, with vivid, almost cinematic clarity. Your body is still now, completely still. Your breathing is shallow, even. Your muscles are momentarily paralyzed, not from danger but design. It is a gentle safeguard, keeping you from acting out the dreams unfolding within. But inside your mind, activity flares. The brain in REM is vibrant, electric, almost as active as when you're awake. But the direction of that activity is different. It is turned inward, toward memory, story, and emotion. You pass one mirrored panel, and a dream shimmers into view. It flickers and changes. Your childhood bedroom becomes a city street, then a forest, then the inside of a clock. You are not in control, but you are still the dreamer. The mind in REM borrows from your life, pulling scenes from memory, stitching them together with metaphor and mystery. The visual cortex lights up, creating the scenery. The limbic system stirs, weaving in emotion joy, fear, longing. But the prefrontal cortex, the logical thinker, goes quiet. This is why dreams feel real, yet impossible. Why time loops, why places shift, why the impossible seems ordinary. You drift past another mirror. This one shows a story you didn't know you remembered. A moment of kindness, or a small grief, buried beneath the noise of the day. Dreams bring them forward, not always clearly, but symbolically. A locked door, a voice with no face, a flight over trees. The brain is not confused. It is processing, digesting emotional weight, through imagery, through movement, through symbols. In REM, you rehearse the unfinished business of your waking life. You experiment with outcomes. You play with possibility. You rewrite conversations and make peace with echoes. This is not fantasy. This is healing. You begin to understand. REM is not random. It is your brain's way of integrating experience, of asking, what does this mean? How do I feel about this? Where does it belong in the story of me? Neuroscientists call this emotional memory processing. And here you feel it like waves. A rising sadness softens into warmth. An unresolved fear dissolves into distance. A confusing moment finds a new shape. Dreams give you space to feel, without needing to act, to explore, without being seen, to remember, without being overwhelmed. You pause at the center of the mirrored hall. Here, the reflections dance slowly, not as full dreams now, but as flickers. Your eyes, even closed, move rapidly beneath their lids. This is what gives REM its name. The eyes follow the dream. Even in the dark, they trace the shape of the story. Your brain moves through REM cycles multiple times each night, each cycle longer than the last. It is during the final hours of sleep that dreams become richest, most vivid, most meaningful. You feel time stretch and bend. It is no longer linear here. Minutes become hours. Seconds become scenes. A feeling turns into a landscape. A question becomes a conversation. A single memory unfolds into something unexpected. You are not alone in this experience. All dreaming creatures share it. Mammals, birds, even some reptiles show signs of REM. It is a shared gift of life. To imagine in sleep, to see what cannot be seen, to know something new by feeling it first. And yet, as strange as dreams can be, your brain remembers what is important. It does not keep every detail, but it keeps the emotional tone, the insight, the shift. You may not remember your dream upon waking, but your body will. Your emotional system will. Something will have changed, softened, organized, resolved. The mirrors begin to grow dim now, not fading, just calming. The dream work is done for now. The stage is going dark. As your brain prepares to move into deeper restoration, you feel your breath grow slower again. Your muscles remain still, but your mind, once a theater, is now a sanctuary. And as you float past the final mirror, you catch one last glimpse of your reflection. It looks peaceful, curious, at ease. You are ready to drift into the quiet places beneath dreaming, where not just emotion, but the brain itself is gently washed and restored. You feel the current shifting, a tide within your mind, a silent system beginning to stir, not for thought, but for cleansing. The water deepens, the air thins, and you drift toward a passage where the lake begins to clean itself, where the body heals in stillness. You have drifted far now, below the mirror of dreams, below the stillness of breath, into a quiet place of hidden currents. It is darker here, not frightening, but deep, like the hush of a cave filled with water. You do not move, but something inside you does. In this slow, sacred hour of the night, a quiet system begins to stir. It is not your lungs. It is not your heart. It is something rarer, the brain's cleansing tide. While your body rests, your brain begins to wash itself, not with soap or blood or breath, but with a clear, cerebrospinal tide that pulses through its deepest chambers. This process is called the glymphatic system, a word soft and strange, like something whispered through water. It activates only when you sleep, especially in your deepest stages. You are not aware of it, but your brain's support cells, the glia, open tiny passageways. They allow the fluid surrounding your brain to sweep through the tissue like a gentle current through reeds. It moves slowly, purposefully. It gathers the byproducts of your waking hours, proteins, toxins, molecular debris, and carries them away. These waste molecules build up when you think, when you feel, when you live. They are not bad. They are simply remnants, footprints left by a busy mind. But if left unwashed, they cloud the clarity of thought. They tangle memory. They burden emotion. So each night, in this deep, slow hour, your brain releases the tide. And as the fluid flows, you feel something unnameable slip away, a thought you didn't need, a weight that isn't yours, a noise that no longer belongs. You may picture it like a forest after rainfall, leaves shining, the dust washed clean from every branch, or like a library at night, where old books are gently dusted, reshelved in silence, prepared for the day to come. This is not just a metaphor. It is biology. It is life in motion. Your interstitial spaces, those quiet gaps between brain cells, widen as you sleep, making room for the current. And as the cerebrospinal fluid flows, your brain shrinks slightly, just enough to let the cleansing deepen. Your pulse slows, your breathing softens, the tide moves in rhythm with the slow beat of your resting body. You are not conscious, but your brain is wise. It knows this is the time to clear what does not serve you, to let go of what you no longer need. Some researchers believe this nightly cleansing helps prevent decline, protects memory, and preserves emotional balance. Sleep, then, is not just for rest. It is renewal. It is repaired. You are not merely unconscious. You are being tended to, lovingly, intelligently, organically. The tide inside you is quiet. It asks for nothing, simply moves, soft as breath. And when it has finished, it withdraws, leaving behind a brighter mind. The water's still, the brain settles, the cleansing is complete. You feel the difference, even if you don't name it. There is more space between thoughts, more light between feelings, a freshness in your being that you carry into the morning without knowing why. And as this chapter closes, you sense the lake again, the one from the beginning. You return to its shore gently. The water is smoother now, still, reflective, renewed. You lie back. The sky above you is calm. Your mind, a field swept clear by wind. Your body, a vessel emptied of burden. And now, As the night begins to whisper its final lullaby, a melody rises softly through the dark. Not music exactly, but something like it, the rhythm of breath, the song of brainwaves, the hush of starlight, a lullaby written by your biology teacher, a final, sweet reminder that sleep is not escape. It is returning to balance, returning to calm, returning to yourself. So let it be easy now. Let your shoulders fall. Let your thoughts dissolve like mist. There is nothing left to do. You have done enough. Your mind is clean. Your dreams are gentle. And your night is whole. Good night, traveler. Good night, thinker. Good night, beloved mind. Let the current carry you the rest of the way. Sleep well.